Welcome to the Product Design Podcast. I'm your host, Seth Coelen, founder of UX Cabin, where we create world-class web and mobile apps. I'm excited to bring you a behind-the-scenes look into the lives of some of the most interesting and talented people in product design. We'll get strategic advice on how they got to where they are today and things they wish they would have known earlier in their career. All right, welcome to the Product Design Podcast today. We have an exciting guest with us because I believe this is our first visitor from the UK on the podcast. Welcome, Furquan Ahmad, to the podcast. He is a product designer who works at Ford. He's also involved in the Figma community and does a lot of work in the YouTube space, making tutorials and resources for other designers. Furquan, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the show, Seth. I really appreciate you having me. This is my first podcast and just super excited to actually talk about design with yourself. It's a really interesting time in my career as well, so I'm excited to chat.
Absolutely. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you like to do in your day-to-day?
Yeah, sure. So obviously my name is Furquan and currently working as a product designer at Ford. Been there for like 6 years. I currently live in London, well, just outside right now of London. Basically all my life, really, all my 24 years. What do I do outside of designing and pushing pixels day to day? I like to do a bit of climbing, a bit of running, a lot of gaming as well. And like you mentioned, I've got those side hustles like creating YouTube videos and contributing on Figma community, trying to give back. But that's basically me in a nutshell right now.
Awesome. You've been at Ford for a while, but you do have some exciting news as in a few months, you're going to be moving to one of the big tech companies.
I know it's kind of surreal. It's been a goal of mine for a while now. I'm going to be moving to Facebook, joining the workplace team in London. I'm super excited. By the time this podcast will have been uploaded, I would have finished my time at Ford after 6 years and just looking really ready for that next chapter, because being at Ford for such a long period, I feel like I've learned so much and I'm grateful for my experience there, but I'm ready for that next chapter. And big tech has been something I really had my eyes on for quite a long time, and looking to really learn as much as possible from such an established design team where you've got a really established design career path. Fingers crossed it's going to work out well at Facebook and I can spend many years like I have at Ford.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations on that. It's a really exciting time. Anyone who's listened to the podcast knows that every single person has such a unique way that they fell into product design. And you're no different. I think you have a really unique angle to share with us. So why don't you tell us a little bit how you got started into design in general and how you kind of fell into your role at Ford?
Yeah, it's always super exciting to hear about every designer's journey. For me, I started an apprenticeship at Ford. So in the UK, they offer these degree apprenticeships. So straight out of school at the age of 18, I started at Ford where they pay for your university degree and you work there full time. So it's 1 day a week at university, 4 days full time at Ford. And for my first 2 years, I started off as a software engineer, something I studied at school as well, like computing. The next 2 years, I had the chance to rotate as a product designer, and that's where I really started to find my passion and craft for it. When at Ford, I always really found myself doing the front end development user stories, and I really loved that. So to have the opportunity at Ford to actually start product design there and to actually be trained in-house is such a unique journey from what I've heard from other designers. And there's no right way of getting into design, but this is a different way where you get trained in-house. And I've had the opportunity to get trained inside an agency as well. So I was trained inside Ogilvy, a WPP agency, working with senior designers day to day and just really learning from them, basically my craft. And that really basically allowed me to just shoot off really and understand what product design is about and add value straight away. So it's about reading the theory and adding value straight away. And that's what the apprenticeship makes it so unique, is that it's not just about theory and exams and coursework. It's about practicality and putting this into the workplace straight away. I can't recommend doing a degree apprenticeship enough if you're in the UK or in another country if they offer something similar. I feel like it's such a great opportunity to basically get into a new career path, whether it's design or like software engineering. If there's a way to basically get someone to pay for your training and work there, the salary might not be high at the start, but it's all about the long-term goal.
That's fantastic. That is such an awesome opportunity. Who is eligible for this type of apprenticeship, or do you apply to it, or is it available to everyone?
Yeah, so in the UK, like you just have to be over 18, and the other requirements that you haven't really done a degree before. And for me, I was super lucky that I stumbled upon the apprenticeship, to be honest, because I was a second ever year at Ford doing this IT degree apprenticeship. I had a few friends in a year above me who were doing the engineering apprenticeship at sixth form. So they told me about this Ford one, and I was just like super grateful to really land this opportunity because originally I wanted to go to university and study computer science with business degree. The university I wanted to go to, like, it was the University of Warwick. It was quite a high up university, but I was one grade short. And me being like stubborn at the age of 18, I was like, oh, I don't want to go to anywhere else. I'd rather wait a year out and like resit. But then like I was like, this apprenticeship came up, and funny enough, like it turned out to be like a better opportunity, to be honest. And it's funny how things work out like that in life, where you might not get your immediate goal, but like the second or third option might actually have turned out to be the better one.
Absolutely. That's really cool. So my question is like, okay, you're 18, you're starting off in this apprenticeship program. How did the start of it go? Did you feel like, oh, I'm not able to contribute any value? Or are you just sitting around watching people? How did the very first initial pieces of that go as you started your apprenticeship?
It's interesting at 18 as an apprentice. I guess it goes down to like what background experience you've got before you started. And going into the workplace, I remember Ford haven't, at the time, they hadn't hired any new hires for like over 15 years, I remember at the time. So it
Wow.
was a super old workplace. And I remember just going in at 18 and people were like double or triple your age. And I was like, wow, this is like just crazy. Like you've been at this company longer than I've lived. And then that was a massive learning curve in itself. So you're trying to adapt and like it's a professional environment as well. You haven't really got any school bells ringing to notify to be at a meeting. Obviously, you're trying to contribute and learn as much as you can as well, because at the end of the day, like you don't want to just be sitting there and do nothing. There's not that many young people around you as well, so you're looking for things to do. That's where I really just got my hands stuck in and trying to learn as much Java as possible. Luckily, I had a few years experience doing it at school. They made some like small user stories and they try to get you involved, but you're not going to be working on like the business, like critical stuff straight away.
Right. Very cool. You said you did a little bit of work preliminarily to get into this in high school. So were you doing computer science courses and things like that?
Yeah, exactly. Funnily enough, Ford's was Ford's like a 15-minute walk like from my school that I went to, as well as like from where I live. I had no contact with Ford until I like first actually applied and landed the job. All of my work that I was doing was all to get into university, not really to land the apprenticeship, but it turns out that it really helped. It's important to obviously try your best, and even if things don't work out, at least you know you've done your best as well. That experience is slowly actually, yeah, it helps out at Ford when you start adding value and releasing your first Java application. Like I still remember that today. It's just that proud moment where you're like, that's my first user story that I've actually done, and that's actually added impact.
Absolutely. One thing I think about with folks who are trying to land a job or whatever, I think the wrong way to go about it is you have one singular goal in mind. You go for that one goal, whether it's that position or job, and you just like cross your fingers and you really hope that you get that one thing versus like increasing your opportunity, whether that's taking online courses or it's doing your own practice work or it's applying for other things that could spurn off future opportunities or things that come up that you could take advantage of versus just holding out for one singular thing.
Yeah, it's important to have options, right? It's funny, right? When like applying for jobs, I can talk about like when like quickly applying for like big tech, right? You might only want to work for these certain list of companies, and you apply. One day you might not be landing any opportunities, and then the next week you could begin 2 or 3 interviews like coming through the
Right.
window. It's about, like you said, increasing your chances. It's like that serendipity, stacking the cards in your favor. If you've like heard that
Yep.
before, like doing more online courses or like releasing things online or creating like YouTube videos or networking with other people. You just have to stack the cards in your favor, and eventually it's also about being patient. Hopefully something, fingers crossed, does come through. And never ever underestimate the importance of networking and making friends with
Yes.
recruiters. Or if your friends like leave a company and have gone to somewhere else, keep in touch with them, because in a few years a post might come up and they'll think of you. It's
Exactly.
super important, because that's like one thing that really helped me with moving to big tech and landing interviews and stuff, is also people referring me or recommending me that I've like previously worked with or mutual friends. And never underestimate the importance of recommendation and networking.
Absolutely. One thing that we talk about a lot at UX Cabin as we're considering bringing on new people or interns
Mm.
is if you don't know what to do next or if you want to improve your skills, literally just go and get one of your favorite apps, Instagram or Coinbase or whatever, and just try your best to copy it in your design program. These are like world-class apps. And if you have the skills to learn how to copy it, that's a great skill that you can turn around and show to a recruiter or a company like, yeah, I made this. And these things are all transferable into like the next thing that you're going to do. And they all build on top of each other. And I really like what you said about basically not burning bridges, having good relationships with folks that you work with. So when they go to different places, the world's a small place now, and we need to make sure that we're treating people in the right way so that they like us and we have good relationships when they move on or if we move on, because those things always come back to you.
Yeah, definitely. It can be very, very hard when you're first starting off to network, get people to like think, get that mindset of like, oh, will someone actually want to talk to me? Or will people even be interested in my work? Or is my work even good enough to share? But the reality is that what's the worst that can happen? And that when you
Yep.
share your work, or like you're trying to redesign an app or like Coinbase or something on Dribbble or
Yep.
your favorite app like Spotify, just share it on Twitter and see what happens. The design communities are honestly so nice. If you don't share the work, then no one's going to know what you've been actually up to. There's a great book by
Yeah.
Austin Kleon, Show Your Work, that helped me a lot, to be honest, to actually start sharing my stuff online and sharing your process. The whole build in public, design in public, it can help you a lot, and you can get feedback from there. It builds your confidence as a person. There's like barely any reason not to show your work, really, unless it's like under NDAs or something. Like you should, because it'll help you a lot long term, and you can see your progressive improvements as well, which is one of the coolest things. Just seeing your progress as the years go on.
So you're really involved in basically what you're talking about, sharing your work, building things in helping the Figma community and building your YouTube channel. How did you get into those things and how have they helped your career?
Yeah, funny enough, with YouTube, a few of my like close friends and family will know that way back like 10 years ago, I had a YouTube channel when I was in like high school, making these stupid videos around tech. So I've always been into tech, like reviewing like phones and stuff. And then I stopped when I basically went into like the university and I had a Saturday job, and I was like, all right, I've got to revise for my exams. I've got a Saturday job or whatever. And I was like, you know what? I've got a social life as well now. So I've always been interested in creating videos, and finishing the apprenticeship, I was like, I've got more time on my hands to do that stuff. But then with Figma, when I saw Figma community released, I was like, oh, it'd be cool to have a research template that I can quickly fill in. Oh, it'd be so cool if someone made like a CV template, or what happens if someone made an accessible color palette? I would always search for this stuff and it wasn't there. So I thought, why can't I just quickly make it and then the thought of other people using my work to help them out in their design process, like that's something that keeps you so motivated. It's something outside of your job that can really keep you motivated into design, and it can keep carry on helping you learn. And the pleasure that you actually get and the gratification is honestly unrivaled. Like when you see hundreds of people every single week downloading your work is so cool. The same with liking your videos, commenting. And for me, it's about giving back as well, because imagine when I first started designing, like I was using open source work, I was watching other people's videos, and they helped me to get where I am today, like landing this Facebook offer. Like, if it weren't for all that stuff when I started, I don't think I'll be there today. So it's important for me to give back as well. And hopefully I'm helping out the younger designers or the old designers, people are just getting started in their career as well. I always have the objective, if I can help at least one person, I feel like I've done my job. So the fact that I'm helping out thousands is crazy.
I 100% agree. It's just wild to see something that you put out in the open and it be so useful to hundreds or thousands of people. I know there's a few blog posts that I wrote and posted on Medium. Even still to this day, people will like reference that or use that, or things in the Figma community that get a few hundred downloads every week. That's just so cool and rewarding. And I think it points to the design community, kind of like you had said, being helpful and not being gatekeepers. No one's trying to keep anyone out of design. Everyone's trying to build each other up and bring more into design and help the community flourish even more.
Yeah, definitely. It's about trying to get as many people as possible into this industry. At the end of the day, it's not about gatekeeping. Like there are going to be courses where people have put a lot of time and effort and then they do charge money, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
But then there's also the alternative of building up and giving out free content and building up your brand as a person and helping out those people as well, because maybe one day those people will be in a position to pay and like give back, or they'll remember. It goes both ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think of that a lot. Even if you pay for some resources or if you do a boot camp, the goal in that is that you're eventually going to get a job that earns 10 or 100x more than what that costs. So it's a great investment. These folks who create these resources, free or otherwise, are doing a great work for the community.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many cool creators out there. And maybe like one of you guys could be one of them as well. It doesn't take too much to get started to contribute to the community these days either. That's one of the cool things about it. It doesn't just have to be Figma or YouTube. There's other cool tools out there,
Exactly.
Adobe XD or like the Sketch. But I just love Figma so much. It's just such an easy tool to use. That's why I contribute there so much, and the community there's like really wholesome.
Absolutely. Thinking about Ford being one of the biggest brands on the planet, traditionally not being a digital design company, what has it been like working at such a huge company, and how does design have an influence on the overall brand and product of Ford?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess it goes down to when I first started in 2015, I'd say product design wasn't that big in terms of like building digital apps. But obviously you have like the Ford designers designing the cars, right? So like design's
Right.
obviously always been at the heart of the company. It's over 100 years old. But then it's like, interestingly enough, when Tesla really got onto the scene, like you really started to see things shift really fast. And you've basically seen a massive shift in the industry, especially with the rise of electric vehicles, all having modems in and being connected to the cloud. So there's all of this data inside of them. And now you can create like apps that can basically interact with your vehicles, and it's something that customers expect now. And Ford had to really, really scramble and actually quickly learn that we need to actually do our design work in-house. We need to develop these apps in-house because it was all done by agencies before. So it took them at least 3-4 years to really develop this in-house software development product design capability. That's why I went out to the agency to learn this, but they've got a really decent team inside now, and it's a great place for young people and juniors to really learn inside Ford because it's such a forgiving environment. The culture is so nice to learn in, and people are so open. When you buy a car, it's not just about the vehicle anymore, it's about the tech. That's what people really want to see, and they want to see like journey levels, fuel prices. They want to see where's the next electric charging point, what's my electric level on my vehicle, Can I schedule some charging? Where's the nearest fuel station? All of this, they want in the palms of their hands. Things are changing really quickly because of the technology that's getting released inside a vehicle. So we'll be working on features that would be released in the cars 2 years ahead of time. So things like
Wow.
fuel reports and journey histories, it was like worked on like 2 years ago before it was actually fully released to the market. Same with live breakdowns where you can track on an Uber style map. Because the technology inside the car is slowly been getting all digitized. Like building like Tesla had this advantage of basically building a brand new vehicle. They could see all the data at one time, but Ford are slowly like changing this with vehicles like the Mach-E, the F-150, Lightning, all these brand new vehicles they are releasing. Like they are now, you can fully connect to them really well compared to 3 years ago. You couldn't really connect that well to them with your phone. It's crazy the shift that they've had to play.
That's incredible. So, working on the design team at Ford, did it feel like a huge company, or did your specific team make it feel like a smaller, tight knit group?
One cool thing about working at Ford is whenever you're traveling, like you'd mention, oh yeah, I work at Ford. And people would recognize the brand anywhere, which is kind of crazy, like globally. But then, like you said, it really did feel like a tight knit group when working on specific features inside Ford, but they always had a global sign off process. So if I was working on Ford Pass, which is the flagship app for Ford, so it's the app that allows you to start and stop your engine, get your vehicle history, your fuel levels, your fuel price, all of this stuff. This was mainly predominantly actually North American based, but then some features were outsourced to Europe, Asia Pacific. Would have our UK design team, and it was really close knit. But then everything was always North American signed off because that's where all the money's made. They sell F-150s like hotcakes in North America. So they always feel like they had the right to basically sign off all the features, and basically there was a full autonomy on that app. It has its advantages and disadvantages, but predominantly it was a great learning experience.
Yeah, I can only imagine the type of sign off process for a company of that size. You think of changing one thing and 90 different people have to see it and approve it. Was the approval process really long and arduous, or was it quicker than you think?
I'd say they'll give you a lot of freedom to basically create what you want at the start. And then the approval process was, I'd say, like at least like 3 or 4 stages for your final designs to actually be signed off. And it all have to conform to the same like central design system. And ultimately, even if you'd have user research back decisions and data informed decisions, the NA guys, their opinions basically trump everything. You could have senior product owners in the UK that would agree with something, but even then, it's down to like basically the global sign off. So you'd have to get a UK sign off, and then once everyone's happy in the UK, then it would go to the global level. And then once a global team is happy, then it gets approved. So there's quite a few sign off processes. You do get freedom at the start, but that slowly goes away.
Right. Yeah. I think every designer's worst nightmare is design by committee, where you show your design and then just a big committee designs it or changes it the rest of the way that aren't in the design field. How at Ford did you guys keep it from being necessarily designed by committee, or was it that way just because of how big it was and you had random VPs coming in and being like, I don't like this, change it, this is not my favorite color, or whatever silly reason?
Yeah, so it was hard. It's very hard, to be honest. I feel everyone's pain in like this position. We had people come in. We had a senior products owner. He'd come in with a PowerPoint presentation and he'd use Microsoft Shapes and tell us, all right, this is what we want the feature to look like. This is the brand new feature for like Fuel Report. This is how I think it should be going. I'll be like, this is crazy. I was like 19, like 20 at the time. I was like, well, this surely can't be the way of how things are done here. But because it's like a political agency relationship where Ford are paying the agency like big bucks, like the guys had to kind of agree with some of the stuff. They'd always have to get the stakeholders involved. And it was painful, honestly, when you'd have someone come in and as a designer, like, it really demoralizes you. It feels like your work's like kind of being devalued when some guys come over with like Microsoft Shapes to like show you what the new feature should look like. So you'd always have to basically take them to the user research sessions and show them people don't really want this feature here, or this feature's like not really well received. Then you'd have to say, we've explored your option, but here's other options that have been performing better or are looking better, or it's been inspired by your idea. And it's like learning how to do with that bureaucracy and politics. I've learned a lot, like how to basically communicate and basically bring everyone along with you in the journey, because there's some really, really good storytellers in the agency that really could get these stakeholders involved. Because these guys like coming over with PowerPoint presentations telling you what to do, it's disheartening, but you've got to learn to play the game and really write it out. Because I know stereotypically this isn't what people dream design to be, but it's what it is like in reality sometimes.
I think you hit the nail on the head. That's not something that's just unique to Ford. My experience as a designer, you're like part salesman, part designer. You really have to sell your idea and storytell along the way. And the good designers storytell with research and data that back everything up. And hopefully whoever your client is or whoever you're working for, they prioritize that data and that research above design or shapes or anything like that. But it can get tough in my days sharing a feature that was fully researched and fully designed and tested, and the business just basically saying, that's nice, we'll consider it in 2 years. And you're like,
yeah, 2 years, jeez. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, there's stories like one senior stakeholder come and be like, I was just talking to my mate down the pub the other day. He owns a van, and he was talking about how like he was having this struggle, and it'd be so cool to have this feature. It's interesting. People will be like, oh, Steve Jobs with the iPhone. Like, I'm sure he did do loads of user research to like figure out, design a new iPhone. But then I don't think there's that many pioneers and innovators out there that can figure things out just by a quick conversation in the pub. It's about finding that balance. And there's one too many of those conversations where there's a senior stakeholder, oh, I just spoke to my neighbor yesterday and they came up with this idea. And it's just like, all right, great. How many of these ideas are they just going to come up with and come in with every day? And it really can demoralize you as a person. And it's about learning how to deal with that. And it's a skill in itself to basically find that motivation to be that person that goes in a meeting to like back your things up with data, research, and basically having that motivation to speak out as well. Because some people, they might be just like tired or like they've had enough of it, but someone in the room's got to speak up.
Absolutely. What I found is like the larger the company, the more features that they want to put into something. And they kind of have this product idea of more features equals better. And it's probably the opposite. The less features, the less confusing and more streamlined it is. Did you run into that problem where people wanted to just pack in so many different features into the app?
Yeah, FordPass on previous versions, the load times were crazy. It was bloated with so many features because at the time, if you get your feature in the app, like you get a performance-based bonus, and it was encouraging people to basically incentivize them to get features inside the app, which wasn't exactly the reality of like what you really want. Because it's more of a skill in itself to actually derail and actually claw back features that haven't been that successfully launched. Like, there's features where, an app does it so much better, like Google Maps, for example, to find local amenities around you. But then there's things like, oh, wait, tracking your journey history is about to make sense inside this FordPass app. There's like tons of other examples of features where you think, wait, there's already apps that do this way better. Why do we need this inside our app?
That's one of the hardest things that I have to try to communicate to new clients, is because they think they have to make their startup or their app have all of these things just to like hit baseline. We got to have a news feed, or we got to have photo sharing or maps or whatever. And it's like, no one's going to use your crappy version of Instagram or Google Maps. You've got to have something uniquely valuable to it to make anyone ever want to use your product. It's just a very hard product concept to wrap your head around, I think.
Yeah, definitely. At the end of the day, a lot of these apps are like utility tools I've been designing, and they're not meant to be really getting daily like average session durations going up. They're not meant to be trying to get like monthly average users. We're not really trying to get as many users as possible using it every single day. It's meant to be more of a tool. It's great if people, it's more about task completion time and task completion. Those are the success metrics that we should be measuring, rather than the amount of people that use our app every single day or the amount of people that have downloaded the app. It's a different way of measuring success. Just because all of these big tech guys use these metrics for like social media apps doesn't mean they should transcend into utility apps as well. Yeah, it doesn't really create the right culture, to be honest.
Right. Like if everyone on the Ford Pass app, if your goal was to like get people to use it as long as possible, it probably means that something's wrong or it's not easy enough for them to use quickly. So I could see how those metrics could really throw off the user experience if those are your goals. Thinking about the highs and lows of your career, do you have any peaks and valleys that you've had that you could talk through?
Yeah, I guess it's always nice to talk through the positives first. So, like, a massive thing I'd like to see as a success is finishing this 4-year degree apprenticeship. Mainly because, like, 4 years at the time, it was a really challenging time period, because studying part time and working full time was a really, really tough thing to take on. Because in the final year, you're doing like the same workload as a full time student, and you're working full time, and to complete that and getting first class honors and all that stuff was a massive accomplishment. It wasn't my first choice, like option, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, right? There were times where I questioned, is this apprenticeship the right thing to do? Have I made the right decision? Shall I like bail out like halfway through? Am I like enjoying this work day to day? There were days where, yeah, things aren't like going that well. Like those stakeholder meetings, they like kind of get on top of you, and you're like, oh, I wish I really never chose this. Like, I'm really young. At the time I was like 20, 21. I should be like making mistakes, traveling the world or doing like stupid stuff. Not sitting in these corporate meetings day to day in the business, like in London, and looking at the River Thames, like, have I made the wrong choice here? But that was a massive milestone. 4 years, yep, completed apprenticeship degree, check, no debt. And the next high point was, I'd say, before landing the job at Facebook, it was pretty releasing last mile delivery as a sole designer. As a first time, like, I managed to scale up a delivery network during the pandemic from 100 to 1,000 deliveries a day during COVID, as the only designer. And like everything was relying on the app that I designed, all the user experience, the interactions working to get the operations to where I was like, it actually worked. My design work actually helped build a delivery network that's now being scaled in multiple cities. That was like a massive accomplishment. And then I'd say the last high point is now landing big tech, because in the apprenticeship I knew quite early on that, yeah, I don't want to be at, like I mentioned, I've seen people here at Ford for over 30 years. I was like, I cannot be me. It's nothing against Ford. It's just the way that the culture and lifestyles really changed. You know, you don't get rewarded for staying so long at one company. And big tech, something I had my eyes on for ages, like making those tech YouTube videos when I was younger, and having an established design career path and seeing these apps used by billions of people. I was like, yeah, I want to be there and learn from these guys. They must be like some pretty high caliber people down there. Let's see what it's all about. So actually landing that interview and like actually passing it, yeah, that was intense, and I was really pleased. But low points, I'd say there's a few. You know, I've talked through like briefly about them, but finishing the apprenticeship, I wanted to leave straight away. To be honest, I was like, you know what, I'm done here. I can't wait to move on. Like, I've launched, at the time I was working on this app called FallPass Pro. We released it from the ground up. I designed it with like multiple designers. I was working on the design system and leading features, and I was like working with the agency. There's a bit of politics on how the app was going, but we released it, and the culture was like getting a bit toxic. And I was like, oh man, this really isn't for me. I can't wait to leave Ford, or I can't wait to leave this team. Like, I've had enough. Like, this is it. I just like was like quite like going to work. I just couldn't even motivate myself to like go to these 9:30 a.m. meetings. Like, I just wanted to quit. But speaking to my manager and the people around me, they were like, all right, there's another opportunity around us. There's this app called Last Mile Delivery. They're looking for someone to lead the designs, and we believe that you can do it. I was like, all right, let me stick around, and like, this is like last mile. It's going to be my last project. So if it doesn't turn out to be good, I'll move on. I stuck at it and it turned out to be a really good opportunity because it helped me a lot in my interviews and stuff. But there were definitely low points where basically inside I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't wait to leave. But luckily I managed to get out of that environment and through releasing the app, like move into a team, and it worked out really well, to be honest. I'm just thankful for having the people around me to help me.
Wow. So you basically talked to your manager and had to kind of explain where your head was, your thought process, and your manager was able to help tweak things for you to make a better work environment for you?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those where, when you get in like a negative mindset, everything around you, you can see the negative in everything, basically. What's the point of this meeting? Oh, this person is like really frustrating me, even though they're just doing some small stuff that would never basically annoy you previously. I think this all spiraled from, I remember, because this project, I was doing my final year of university, my dissertation, and the project was tied to a vehicle release. So there's a brand new Transit getting released, and we had only 3 months to design an end-to-end app, like 3-4 months basically. And one of the designers, like the head of design, I remember he went to me one day in front of like the whole design team and product owners. He basically said, it was like, what's wrong? This work isn't good enough. I'm not seeing any work. It was like, how is this 1 week's worth of work? I'm barely seeing any screens here. And he said that in front of everyone. There was like 20 odd, 30 odd people there. And he just called me out. And I was like, are you serious? I've been working at home extra hours trying to get all of this work done, and you're saying this isn't good enough? There's no design system in place. I'm doing like all the longevity of like trying to get everything done properly. And I was like, oh man, this is toxic. I've never been called out before like this ever. It's not like that inside Ford, but because I was working with the agency, it was a bit different. And it's like I remember till today, when you get called out like that, it's kind of those memories you really remember. And it's something I'd hopefully, if I was ever to manage people, like something I'd remember not to do, because it's really something that it doesn't really rub off great as on you or the team around you. And luckily I had designers around me that went, and that was wrong. He shouldn't have done that. You've been doing great. One of the guys invited me to lunch. He paid for my meal and was like, man, honestly, I can see you're frustrated here. Like, look, maybe move project, like work on that long-term vision. You've got the skill set, you've got the opportunities, you're talented enough to make it to big tech, just like stick it out.
Wow. So it sounded like you eventually got better versus staying bitter. A little bit of bitter and then you got better, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's something I'm always conscious about. Workplace and culture is so important, work-life balance. You do learn a lot in those situations under pressure and stuff, but it's just not good really for your health, to be honest, when things get sour like that and like bitter.
Right. Yeah, it's funny when people are like, oh, how are you building your agency? Or like, how are you growing your business? And literally the only thing I know how to do is the opposite of the agencies I worked for. Different agencies have different strengths and weaknesses. And there's like a lot of things when I was going through agencies, like, man, if I ever built a business, I would do things the opposite way of that. Or like, I would never want to have that in place or do this or have this process. And learning is not just from watching someone's good example. Learning can also be from watching people's bad examples and seeing exactly what you don't want to do. And
yeah, definitely. It's so hard in a moment. Like when these other more senior people around me were telling me, look, you can learn loads from bad projects as well and how they're badly run. Like there's always a learning opportunity there. Being younger, I was like, I only want to be working on like good projects. I want to be learning the proper way of doing things. Like, how am I ever going to make it to like a big tech company if I don't know the proper processes? Again, it's about having those people over your shoulder to tell you this is still a good opportunity. The value that you're pushing is like, you won't get this at any other company, really. Like at Ford, it's a big brand and they're letting you design an entire feature or like lead entire delivery out. Like it's crazy, but learn from these bad experiences, these bad processes, and you can now look at them and laugh. That's just like, yeah, it's kind of cringy that moment, but at least like I've learned so much from it. And now I think about it, it's just about, I'm even more grateful for those people around me to help guide me through those like down moments,
Right. I remember when I was in school, I think it was junior high, and I had this really bad teacher that I didn't like. And I was just telling my dad about her, and I was like,
Yeah.
man, she's so mean. She's the worst. She's so unfair. And trying to get my dad to just kind of join in and be like, yeah, it's bad. You have it rough. He was like, well, I think God wants you to learn something from this situation.
Yeah,
And I was like, come on, Dad, just be miserable with me. But he's like, no,
yeah, yeah.
I think there's something you need to learn from this. And God put this in your life for a reason. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And that kind of always stuck with me is like, no matter where you're at, there's a reason for it. There's something to learn from it. And if you don't look for that reason, you're just going to get depressed and frustrated and not have that learning experience from it.
Yeah, definitely. It's a matter of perspective, right? Like two people can be in the exact same scenario and view things completely differently. One can see it as a positive, one can see it as a negative. You just have to think deeper in some moments. But for me, obviously, I couldn't see the positive until I had someone really around me to tell me about that and switch my mindset. And
Right.
yeah, that's super important as well.
Absolutely. So, thinking about someone who's listening to your journey who wants to get started in product design, what piece of advice would you give?
Yeah, if you're like in the UK, there's actually now design UX degree apprenticeships where they actually pay for your training. It's a great way to basically get that experience in house, and then you get the qualifications and you can learn all the theory of design. If that isn't available, I'd say look at the whole contributing to like Figma community and the open source world and trying to give back there, because that's a really great place to get your name out there and network with people and build friends. Like create a Twitter account and start tweeting about designs. People are going to be interested in not just what you produce, but also what you read, what you're interested in, what inspires you as a person. Get your name out there, apply, and don't be scared. Because I'm still scared today to actually publish certain things, and I remember that look, I wouldn't be here today, or I wouldn't get certain opportunities if I didn't push my work. So yeah, try and design in public, apply for opportunities, network with people, and look at training programs as well, because there's always going to be something out there for you. And design is still expanding. We're really lucky, to be honest. That is a skill set that's just grown and grown.
That's such great advice. I think one of the key pieces that I don't think I've ever heard is you were talking about like even if you're starting out, it's just to build something for someone instead of waiting for someone to give you something or give you an opportunity or whatever. Just go ahead and make something for the community, and you'll get more recognition, more feedback, and more growth that way than just kind of waiting and like hoping for someone to give you an opportunity. You can
Yeah,
go ahead and
yeah.
take that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. At the end of the day, you always think you shouldn't be waiting for other people to present opportunities in your hand. I'm a firm believer of you actually create your own luck as well. You definitely can get lucky in certain situations, but you create your own luck as well. It's about serendipity, publishing, networking. Yeah, it doesn't just happen. You don't just wake up one day and then suddenly you land an interview at a big tech company. So there's all of this stuff that happens in the background that people don't see. And that's super important. Do all the small things that they all lead up to the bigger things.
Yeah. I don't know who said it. It was probably like Gary Vee or something. But he was like, yeah, people try one thing and they fail at it and then they give up. And he was like, if you knew all the things I failed at, he's like, all you have to do is be successful one time and that builds on itself. Your record might be awful, but if you get one win, you get one job, you get one contract, whatever, that could change the whole game, even if you've had 100 or 1,000 failures.
That's super cool. Yeah, that's so true, man. People don't see how many interviews I failed. I failed probably 8, 9 interviews that weren't even for big tech companies, or I've submitted maybe 10, 20,
Right.
30 applications. All of those failures, they all eventually led to this success. And once you, like you said, get that success, right? That one success, it just snowballs from there. But it's just about staying motivated in those situations. It can be really, really, really tough, honestly.
Yeah. So, looking back on your career as you started out, is there anything that you wish you had known or something that you could tell your younger self to be prepared for or to know starting out that you didn't know?
Yeah, other than like the classic like invest in Bitcoin and all of that stuff, right? As a designer, as a designer, I'd probably say, look, don't underestimate the importance of meetups, design meetups. I know in like COVID it can be harder, but I used to like after work go to these design meetups and like, design talks during the middle of the week, and you'd learn so much. There'll be talks from people at Deliveroo or Spotify or Facebook where they'll be talking about their work, and they'll all be free as well. There's always free pizza, then there's networking after, and I never realized how much I was learning from there, and I just thought it was fun, just like engaging, going to these events as something to do after work. Don't ever underestimate the power of meetups and networking of friends. It's so cool, to be honest, how much you can learn from those. And it's also, remember the importance of politics in design as well. It's not just about designing pixels. There's going to be that guy that comes in with those PowerPoint presentations or changes the goalposts. Like, learn to deal with basic ambiguity, because ambiguity, like it separates you from like a junior to like a mid to a senior. Like how well you can deal with that ambiguity and people changing things, and learning to play like politics and goalposts, because it can be hard in a moment, but in the long term, it pays out a lot.
Absolutely. One of the greatest skills is just being able to learn how to pull different levers of motivation for people and how to get to the core of what they want to help them feel satisfied and get to the best product, right? I think you said it perfectly. With any organization, there's going to be that structure of politics and characters within that. And it takes a lot of soft skills to be able to figure out, like, okay, what's this person's core motivation? What do they want? What do they need? What do they need to feel security, or they're part of the process, or I'm taking something away from them? And just playing those in your mind to put the right scenario to make the best product is an incredible lifelong skill that it's very hard to get good at, but if you can, you're going to make some big waves in the industry for sure.
Yeah, one thing that really helped me later on is you can get really passionate about your job, but at the end of the day, it's just your job. It's good to get passionate, but don't get so worked up to it that you bring that home with you. Remember that you've got your home life, your social life. If you've got a family and kids, don't bring that stress with you outside of working from home. I know it's a lot harder as well, but have those like side hustles or side projects as well. If things aren't going that well, at least you have something to take your mind off. That's how it really helped me. Now I've got writing a design newsletter. I've got Figma community YouTube videos. If things aren't going that well at work, at least have something else that picks me up. And that really helped me, because I remember when I was just working university work, there were two big frustrations. And it was basically frustration after frustration. I just kept on like building up. And when I realized I had a side hobby, side interest like running, climbing, YouTube, newsletters, have a passion outside of design or outside of work, at least you don't have to consume your whole mind about this, and you bring that home with you and you think about it into the weekend as well, because it can just take over your life.
That's so good. Yeah. No matter what company or organization you're at, it could be the coolest company in the world. There's always going to be people who overrule your decision or change what you would have done. I think that's just a constant in life. But if you have your own projects and side work and side hustles, there's opportunity for you to control the whole process and you to enjoy that aspect of it. And no one can tell you to change it or do it different. And it's just completely for you. I think it's a really healthy mindset you were just talking about, is to not basically put all your eggs in one basket and put your happiness in the success of a project that you don't even have full control over.
Yeah, that happens with me. I remember when Full Pass Pro got delayed, the project, and we wasn't meeting deadlines, and I remember I got like shunned at work that sorry I gave, but I realized that, wait, I'm caring way too much about this project. Like, it's important I care, but then there's so much other stuff to get on with in the world. Like, focus more on your running, gaming with your mates, learn to enjoy other things as well. It was affecting me way more than it should have, basically. And I learned that, wait, these more senior guys, they've got other stuff going on. They don't care as much because they realize that there's other things that are way more important as well outside of work.
Absolutely. Well, Furquan, you have given us a ton of really good things to think on and chew on. You are wise beyond your years. Super excited to see your career path and all the things that you are doing and you're going to do. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on the show, Seth. And yeah, like hopefully some of you guys like learned something new and something interesting from myself. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today on the Product Design Podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation, be sure and go follow our guests. Let them know they did a great job and you learned a lot. More to come in the following weeks as we bring on new guests. Please hit that subscribe button so that you will get these podcasts and learn a ton about the product design community. Excited to see you next time. Thanks.